You almost forgot my name. It's okay though. I'm just joking. Just joking. It's good to see all of you. Thank you very much for joining the session. So I'm calling in from relatively sunny London. It's great to have you on the call, and I want to begin by saying thank you to Radha Bhakti, Ananda Madhava, and Malvika, and all the others who've been involved in making this get-together the great success that I'm already hearing that it is. It's very inspired. There's a few things we have to share with you. I guess one thing I'm going to say to you up front is what I'd like you to do is to grab something to write with. Okay, I know that they sent out some, information and notes, but I'm very much thinking that our time together is always short. And therefore, it's always on my mind, how can we make sure that we're able to offer the very best that we can in the time that we have? Okay, so grab a pen and paper, and also bear in mind that what we're going to go through is like a menu. Okay, so when you go to a good restaurant, now, let me say up front, I know many of us haven't been to a restaurant for some time now because of the coronavirus. I get it. Okay, but rewind backwards, okay? Back to when it was a little bit more normal. When you go to a good restaurant, you go in, there's all kinds of things on the menu, okay? And one thing that's on the menu will be more attractive, delicious, relevant to you than something else. So what we're going to go through today is a similar kind of vibe. We're going to share many ideas. We're going to bounce around with a few key things. I want you to really tune into yourself for this session. I want you to tune into your heart, into your intuition, into the super soul Krishna in your heart, and just listen out and feel for what resonates, right? Because we're all at different stages in our journey. And therefore, what resonates more with one person may not resonate so much with another person because they need something different, okay? And that's completely fine. But I want you to lock away whatever you hear or whatever you discuss in our time together. You think, you know what, that's something I don't do. Or that's something that I could apply more in my own spiritual life. So my mentor, who passed away about 15 years ago, he created this initiative, which was really about what we call applied spiritual technology. And the idea was very simple. The idea was that if we take the deep teachings of Krishna consciousness, and if we start to apply it practically in our lives, something incredibly powerful happens, okay? So you have this upward spiral. So first of all, you had a theory. Then you put the theory into practice. Then because you put the theory into practice, you got a particular result. And that result helps you to understand the theory is a fact, okay? In other words, it takes it from theory, from something that's an idea, into something that makes a difference in the real world. And every time you do that, you're literally creating your own staircase back to the spiritual world. Okay, I repeat that. Every time we apply Krishna consciousness and you see the force and the power of Krishna consciousness, you see the practicality of Krishna consciousness in a way that's not some kind of ethereal or esoteric idea. You saw it, you used it, it made a big, powerful difference in your day-to-day life. That's how you build a staircase of faith. Okay, and in that way, you're literally moving with tremendous power and force in your spiritual journey. Okay, and we'll come back to that concept in a moment. I'm gonna step back, I'm gonna rein myself in, and I just wanna say Mangalacharyan. Most of you will know, but just in case we have others who are not familiar with this particular prayer, literally the Mangalacharyan, it translates as meaning an auspicious invocation. So you'll often hear speakers, when they're giving class, they'll begin by saying this particular prayer. And what the prayer does, literally, and I mean this literally, I've experimented with these different things. It literally generates great, positive, good fortune in the lives of the people who recite and hear this particular prayer. I was on a retreat with His Holiness Chandramuli Swami. This was a few years ago. Actually, no, it was even, I think, last year. I believe it was last year. And so I was just sharing something in the class and I began by saying this prayer that I'm about to say. And then he mentioned, because he was sitting in the class, and he mentioned this particular point about how it really changes the environment and changes the atmosphere, okay? And what we do when we say this prayer, we also align ourselves literally with divine mercy, divine grace. Therefore, as we do this more in our lives, it's transformative. So the whole time that we have together, this is not a class, okay? Think of this more like a workshop where we're getting some tools and ideas that we can plug in and play, that we can put into practice in our lives to literally experience spiritual life, life in general, on a much higher, much more successful, and much more fulfilling level. Okay, so I'll say the Mangalacharan, which connects it with our spiritual teachers, and then we'll get into the discussion today. If you know it, feel free to join in. If you just want to hear, that's completely fine, and we'll go forward from there. Okay. Magyana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshum Militam Yanatasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragnatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Purjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so first of all, I want to say a big thank you to all of you as well for joining the call. The truth of the matter is, I should actually, in a sense, I'm already indebted to you. And the reason for this is very simple. And this is also going to frame what we're going to be doing on the call. There's some research around how people grow, change, and transform, okay? They found that we tend to remember about 70% of what we discuss. We tend to recall and imbibe about 80% of what we experience. And most significantly for us in our time together, we tend to imbibe about 90 to 95% of what we share, what we teach. So to be honest, literally the fact that we're able to share something with you is one of the most powerful and transformative experiences that we can have. Because every time we share something, every time we share some insight, some wisdom, some understanding, we're literally installing, just like you download an app on your phone. When we share what we've learned, what we're learning, what we're applying, what we're experiencing in Krishna consciousness, you're literally installing wisdom in your consciousness. And that wisdom is being installed in the most dynamic way. It's dynamic for two reasons. One is because spiritual knowledge has its own potency, okay? But there's one thing which is more powerful than spiritual knowledge, and that is the direct mercy of Krishna when he comes in his most merciful form of Lord Chaitanya. There's a difference between Krishna and Lord Chaitanya, different incarnations of God, or rather, Krishna's the original, actually both forms of the Lord. When Krishna comes, his thing is, how are you going to go back to Godhead? When Lord Chaitanya comes, his thing is, how are we going to go back to Godhead? When Lord Chaitanya comes, it means literally, this is a family affair. So just like you have your parents, and your parents are very happy when they see you helping your brothers and sisters to pass their exams, learn the material, sharing with them all the hacks, all the tricks that you learned when you were in education. In a similar way, when we share our insights with each other, we're literally empowering one another. So I'm telling you this to frame everything we're going to do from this point onwards. This is not a lecture. I repeat, this is not a lecture. This is an interactive workshop and discussion. And what I want you to do is to feel free to do a couple of things. We're going to do a breakout room exercise as we go through, okay? And I want to set you up for success by really helping to emphasize why it's so important that in the breakouts that you engage and participate fully with your peers in those sessions. That's one point. The second thing I want to do is I want to encourage you as we go through the session, make notes, look into your key takeaways, because at various points, I'm going to ask you, okay, pause, flood me. That means you'll pull into the chat window any key things that you've taken away, any key things. It doesn't have to be even something that we've discussed. It could be something that's sparked by the discussion. And we're doing this on a particular type of faith. We're doing this on the faith that we're all coming together with a real interest in growing and developing. Point number one. Point number two, we're doing this on the basis that I don't have all the answers, but there's someone who's on this call who does. Okay, I repeat, there's someone on this call who has all the answers. And that person who has all the answers, they're in your room as you're on this call right now. The person who's on this call who has all the answers, not only are they in your room, but they're literally sitting within your heart right next to you. So as we go through this discussion, as you get these inspirations from the super soul, flood me, share them on the group chat. Because what may be obvious to you may be groundbreaking and life-changing to someone else, okay? So at certain points, we'll stop and just anything you've taken away at this point, and we'll make it one or two key things. So we'll make it the one or two most significant things at that point, drop them into the chat room for everyone, okay? Because what we'll be doing literally is giving ourselves additional ideas, okay? And don't worry, you know, it's not that we have to take everything and anything that's being said, but we may see something. Krishna arranged for us to see something that you think immediately, wow, that's a message for me. Okay, the other thing is, I want us to use the reactions, and I'm just checking with the organizers, is that functionality working for everyone?
It should be working. Okay. They should be able to do that regardless of a phone.
Okay. Let's do a little test. I want you to raise put your thumbs up for me. Okay, if you're feeling good at this time. Okay, thank you very much. So we may even use some of these emoticons as we go through as well, just to kind of make sure that we have full engagement, because I want you to digest the wisdom. Like I said before, when we take it, learn it, discuss it, really think about it, even when you write it down, but especially when you share it, you're installing that app, that wisdom app, deep in your own unconscious mind, deep in your consciousness. And therefore, it greatly amplifies the chances that at the end of the discussion, we're going to do something different. My own mentor, he had a big concern about our spiritual community, to be very honest. And his biggest issue with our spiritual community, and I remember seeing him say this, was with seeing people not change. That was his biggest thing. His biggest issue was seeing devotees hear all of these different things over many years. Yeah, Christians, yeah, God, oh yeah, you're not the body. And yet seeing that we don't change. You know? And so we want to really flip that. So we're building into the presentation some key ideas that make it transformative. And I'm going to be learning as well. I'm also a student here, right? Because you have Krishna in the heart, you have experiences, insights, classes that I've not heard, books that I've not read, you know, guidance that I've not received, but we can all learn from each other as we go through. At this point, we're gonna amplify the voice of the super soul. What I'm gonna do is pause for literally 30 seconds. And what I'd like you to do in this pause, and you can do this in prayer, you can just close your eyes and do this as a meditation, do it whichever way works for you. But before we go on, I'd like you to activate that super soul even more in your heart by requesting to the Lord in the heart, to Krishna, that in this session, that he please arrange that something that's really important for you to hear, for you to know, or for you to reflect on is shared in this discussion and is shared by you for someone else in this discussion. Do you get the point? So it's a two-way. You're going to request to be a receiver and also to be someone who's a messenger. Okay, so just 30 seconds, make that request, and then we're going to step on. And then once you've done that, raise your emoticon to say that you've done it. Over to you. Okay, so when you've done, please raise your hand just to let me know that we're all on the same page. And I'm also going to promise the organizers, because I've got a habit of going over time, I'm going to promise the organizers, I'll try not to go over time. I'll try not to go over time. Let's keep it real. Let's keep it real. Okay, so we're going to get into a few things. I've got some slides that I would like to share with you. Okay, I'm just going to set this up, and then we're going to take it forward. Okay, so the slides are on the screen, and then we should share. Okay, so I think you can see my slides. Is that correct? Okay, so there's a few things we want to talk about. So again, to be very, very honest, in a spirit of real gratitude, it's an incredible topic to discuss. This topic about determination in Krishna consciousness is literally a topic about determination in our entire lives. When we can understand this subject, then it's literally game over. Okay. What was that term that they were using just before we started this call? Hashtag, is it hashtag? Or was it something.com? I just wanted to hear that again because I love that term. So Ananda Madhava, I'm going to ask you to just break it down for me. What was it? I can't hear. Okay, yes.
Bomb.com.
The bomb.com. I'm definitely going to use that in a future presentation. I might do one called the bomb.com, but I hope there's no copyright on that one. Okay, so as we get this subject matter down, it can literally give us the drive and the tools to move our whole life forward. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was doing a seminar, and he needed a title. And we discussed it, and I said to him, why don't you call it The Future by Design? And I see that this topic very much relates to that same kind of idea, because life means challenges. Let's be very clear about that. Life means challenges. I was reflecting about this about 6 months ago. And I was thinking about this, and I got some really powerful realization on it. Because oftentimes we don't like challenges. Oftentimes when we go through the difficulties in life, we think, why me? I'd rather avoid it. But life means challenges, okay? But there's something even more to this. So when I was reflecting on this, something really occurred to me. It was the echo of my spiritual master's voice in my mind. And he was talking about what happens in Krishna consciousness and what happens in life in general. He said, we all have different kind of karma. We all have our unique journey back home, back to Godhead. So in life, and I'm not sure who did that, but someone just drew on my screen. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But in life, what happens is those tests that we don't pass, they don't pass us. Okay? It's really important. This is a sutra, right? A sutra is a short statement that's packed with insight, right? The tests that we don't pass us. And it's so incredible. I was thinking about this 6 months ago. Just 1 or 2 days ago, I was listening to a class by His Holiness Tamal Christian Raj. He was making a similar point. He said, what happens is if you don't pass your tests to help you to move forward, all that happens is in your next life, you'll be faced with exactly the same tests that you didn't pass previously. Okay? Now, let's just pause for a second because we want to keep it very real. I'm going to ask you to share this in the chat window. Let's just see this. Be honest. No, you won't share this in the chat window. I just want you to use an emoticon. I'm meditating a lot on how all of us are family. So we're going to keep it very open and very honest. Right now, or in your time, in your exploration of spiritual life, how many of you, be honest with me, have known people who you can honestly feel these people, they're not growing. They've become a bit stunted. They've stopped growing. They've stopped developing. If you've ever had that experience, raise your hand for me. Okay. Now I'm just going to flip through to see how many hands are raised. Okay. I can see. Okay. Interesting. The vast majority of you have put your hands up. Now, to be honest with you, that should scare us. Okay. The fact that someone can be around, be exposed to the teachings, the books, the practices, but you know what? Somehow or other, something's paused, right? They've somehow pressed pause. It has a lot to do with the fact of what happens when we go through those situations and the test comes and it's like, you know what? I'm not going to take the test. Now, there's a difference between saying I'm not ready, but I'm going to prepare myself. That's different. But when the person's like, you know what? This is the next step. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to run away. Then they've literally pressed pause in some way. Because we have a journey, because we have particular steps on the journey, because movement forward is necessary for growth. For all of these reasons, this topic about determination in Krishna consciousness is perhaps one of the most important topics. Because if you need to pass a test to get to the result, just like exams, right? You need to pass the exam to graduate. That's what life is all about. The determination to face our tests, pass the exam, and to graduate back to Goloka. That's what we're talking about. And it's interesting also because using this analogy of passing tests, when you graduate, you become qualified for a higher experience in life. That's why tests are not bad. Tests are incredible. They're necessary. They're good because they help us to grow. They help us to graduate, right? They help us to experience whatever is beyond the test. So the student who fails the exams, they have to go back to school, right? The person who passed the exams, they can go on to a higher field of education. They can go into the workplace. They can start earning. It's the exam, and passing the exam is literally the gateway to higher riches, higher experiences in spiritual life. So I want to also encourage you because I see something that breaks my heart, to be honest. And it's a big issue that we have in our communities. We're often so scared of the tests that we even deny the fact that we have to pass them. We're often so scared of the test that we pretend the test doesn't exist. No, I've already passed that exam. No, you haven't. You haven't passed that exam. If you're honest and say you haven't passed the exam, then we can work towards it together. But if someone's pretending that if they're pretending that they've passed already, that's a real bad situation. It's just like, you have someone who's asleep, you can wake them up. But someone who's pretending to be asleep, that person's in real trouble because they're in denial, right? And denial means what? I just want you to put this in the chat window. If I'm in denial, right, thinking about what we know from our scriptures about the modes of material nature, when someone is in denial, what they've just done is they've affected their consciousness with the mode of what? I just want someone to put it into the chat window for me. When we're in denial, we've affected our consciousness with the mode of? Exactly. We all know the answer, right? It's very interesting. In terms of people who have addictions, who want to overcome the addictions, like people who go to Alcoholics Anonymous, things like that. One of the most significant, foundational, but groundbreaking things that they have to do in the early stages before they can move on is to do what? Again, chat window, because I'm learning from you. What do we have to do? You're in Alcoholics Anonymous. What's the first thing you have to really do before you can move forward? Awareness, okay. Be honest with others. You have to admit what? What do you have to admit? Yeah, exactly. We have to acknowledge this is the issue. I'm addicted, right? It's not like, it's not, oh, I just have a drink every now and then, I can handle it, no. You're at Alcoholics Anonymous, baby, right? You got a problem, okay? And it's very powerful. And this is also why, and I'm just gonna bounce around as we go through this, this is also why you really need to have your heart set, your connection, your contact with people who love you, who you love, and who are on your side, and who are going to be there for you against all odds. And we'll come to that topic a bit later on. But the people in your network who are mature enough that you can be honest with them. They don't give up on you. They don't give in either. They're there, is truthful, honest, and encouraging. Those people are worth their weight in gold. There's a very interesting statement in Niti Shastra. And Chanakya, one of the things he says, when you collect such people in your life, you're actually building up your power. It's interesting, isn't it? When you connect, the more you have a network of genuine friends, the more powerful you actually are. Because through that network, you can achieve literally anything. I mean, I'm jumping ahead, but we'll come to that a little bit later on. Anyway, let's just get into our conversation and see where we go with the time that we have together. So we're going to start by showing you a quote from the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm going to read this to you, and I'll read the purport as well. And then we'll go forward from there. So this is Bhagavad Gita 1833. I'm not going to read the Sanskrit, because if I read the Sanskrit, you'll think I'm speaking from some kind of other planet. I'm just going to keep to the translation, because we can just about manage English. And then the purport, then we're going to go on from there. Okay, so this Krishna speaking to Arjuna. O son of Partha, that determination which is unbreakable, okay, tune into this. That determination which is unbreakable, which is sustained with steadfastness by yoga practice, and which thus controls the activities of the mind, life, and senses, is determination in the mode of goodness. Bhagavad Gita 1833, purport by Srila Prabhupada. Yoga is a means to understand the Supreme Soul. One who is steadily fixed in the Supreme Soul with determination, concentrating one's mind, life, and sensory activities on the Supreme, engages in Krishna consciousness. That sort of determination is in the mode of goodness. The word avyabhicharinya is very significant, for it indicates that persons who are engaged in Krishna consciousness are never deviated by any other activity. Okay, I'm going to pause, right? All I want you to do at this point is just give me a realization from what we've just read, the verse or the purport. The verse is on the screen. Just one thing only that's sparked by anything you just heard. Just one idea, one concept, anything. Flood me. Drop it into the chat window, even if it's one line, one sentence, one word. But I want us to digest this a little bit. What stands out? Okay, so let's have a look. Anything that stands out. And if you want, should I read the purple again? Would that help to refresh the memory? Yeah, okay. While you're sharing, I'll read it the purple one more time. Yoga is a means to understand the Supreme Soul. One who is steadily fixed in the Supreme Soul with determination, concentrating one's mind, life, and sensory activities on the Supreme, engages in Krishna consciousness. That sort of determination is in the mode of goodness. The word avyabhicharinya is very significant, for it indicates that persons who are engaged in Krishna consciousness are never deviated by any other activity. So I just want to say, first of all, thank you for sharing. I can see so many different points, and all of these are powerful. I'm not even going to get into those points. I wanted you to share, again, as we said, because we're starting that flow of giving. Excuse me. That flow of giving and receiving, but we may come back to those points a bit later on. I'm going to take it a step forward. I'm going to share what stood out for me on this, then we're going to move into some other ideas. So 2 things. I love this point about control. It is a fact right now that for most people on the planet, they do not have the full access to their free will. When I was thinking about this presentation, I was almost going to pull a slide on here called, it was going to be called Seeker or Slave. Okay, that was the slide I was going to put. I didn't do it at the end of the day, but just the concept. Seeker or slave. See, the thing is this, and Prabhupada writes about this in the Nectar of Instruction. When he writes in the purport to the first verse, Vacho Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam, he talks about controlling, the different aspects of the different urges of the mind, like the body, etc. What happens for most people is that they're not the controllers of their mind. Therefore, they're not having so much control over their life, but rather they're being pulled by so many things in the environment. So you can see this in most of our life. I definitely have this, right? So, I have a plan. Then as I go through the day, this happens. And I'm thinking, okay, oh, that's interesting. And I go in that direction. And then later on, something else happens. Oh, wow, that's really exciting. I move in that direction. And before you know it, the energies got scattered. There's a story about this. There was one man who wanted to dig for gold. He got some advice by a very wise person. The wise person said, okay, you're looking for gold. No problem, we can help you. They said to him, dig in this spot. So he took the advice, starts digging. As he's digging, someone comes up to him and said, what are you doing? Yeah, I'm digging for gold. What are you digging there for? You should dig over here. Oh, really? In wrong place? Yeah, you should dig over there for gold. So the guy stops where he's digging, goes elsewhere, starts digging for gold in another spot. Later on, another stranger comes. What are you doing? I'm digging for gold. What are you digging here for? The gold's over that side. This happens again and again. After a while, the first individual who was actually qualified with knowledge. It's a really important point to understand in the story. The first individual actually knew what he was talking about. So he came back. He saw all of these different holes, shallow holes all over the ground. He said to the guy, what's going on? And the guy said, I'm digging for gold. He said, but I told you to dig over there. What are all these holes? And the guy said to him, I was told by different people there were different places to dig. So I started going into those different places. And he was given the advice by the sage. He said, you made a big mistake. If you had stuck to what I told you in the first place and kept digging, you would have hit gold by now. And I thought that's a great metaphor for our lives, because our lives are very much like that. We have 2 issues. One is we don't know how to qualify the advice that we receive. Okay, it's a big thing. And therefore, we don't necessarily tune in to the right advice. The best advice is, as you can see on the screen, we have information from sources of wisdom, which, to be honest with you, are groundbreaking. I'll be honest, if people outside of our movement really understood the value of the knowledge that we have, they will take this information and they would probably be millionaires, if not billionaires. It is so incredible, And this is the funny thing. Oftentimes, because we're given something and we don't necessarily appreciate the value of it, it's right under our nose. And therefore, we don't really take it seriously. But you'll see oftentimes when that same information is given to a new guy who's fresh, then they can see it for what it actually is. And they're like, wow, oh my God, and then they run with it. It really is like that. We've been given some incredible gems, but we don't understand the value of it. And I'll tell you, there's a good reason why. I had this discussion with Radha Bhakti recently, okay? See, this is also from Shastra. In Kali Yuga, we say it's the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. That means two things. You can decipher Shastra, and you can go into Shastra and you can break beneath the surface, and you can learn all kinds of incredible, crazy facts. So let's break this down. Kali Yuga, age of quarrel and hypocrisy. So you can break it down. It means two things. First of all, quarrel. If you know that in Kali Yuga, there's always going to be disagreements and challenges, my spiritual master said, he said, therefore, any marriage, any friendship, any community, any project, any business which is successful is one which has learned to use challenges and disagreements in a way that's healthy, positive, and constructive. You get the point? In other words, if you know that Kali Yuga is defined by quarrel, disagreement, then an intelligent person will think, if that's going to be the atmosphere and the defining characteristic of this age, then I should learn how to transform disagreements into something constructive. Because I know that life's going to throw disagreements at me because we're in Kali Yuga. Second point, he says the age of quarrel. The second point, the age of hypocrisy. Now, this is an interesting one. And this is why we don't often appreciate what we've been given. If you study self-help, for example, I'm going to make it even more specific. My wife and I, we attended the seminar recently. And I can't even lie to you. I was like, we were both like restless. And it was like, oh my God, like we spent an hour and a half attending the seminar. I was like, I've got so many things, exciting things I'm working on. I don't have an hour and a half. It was not a good use of my time. But what was incredible, you should have seen the people on it. They were literally dropping down in ecstasy. And I was like, really? Really? Like this, you think this is that what was given in the seminar? It's less than 5 minutes in the Bhagavad. You would get more than that in 5 minutes in the Bhagavatam class. I guarantee you. But the reason why the people thought it was so groundbreaking is all because of the packaging. You see? So we talked about quarrel. Hypocrisy means, and this is what happens in the outside world a lot. Oftentimes there's not much substance, but the packaging is awesome. You understand? The packaging is awesome. You know, slick presentations, you know, things look good, clever taglines, nice background music, the whole shebang. And so people think that, wow, this must be amazing because it's all about the packaging. So that hypocrisy point, in Kali Yuga, we're so attuned to the mode of passion that people will walk, something which has got substance, it doesn't blip on the radar, right? But something else which has no substance but loads of packaging, everyone will be like, wow, that's so incredible, that's so great. It's like, really? And that's the reason, because we're so attuned to packaging over substance, we often miss what's in our own tradition. Because often our speakers, they don't package it, right? They just give it to you raw. Okay, Bhagavad Gita says this, now you do. And it's like, I don't know about that. But if you go beyond that, if we go a bit deeper, you'll find incredible things in our tradition. And we're just going to share some of these ideas as we go on. So let's take it a step further. So this is the first point. See, if we're going to be determined, we're going to be determined because we've got a good reason for doing something. You can see this statement, when your why is greater than your why not, you will literally become unstoppable. I did an exercise. This was over 10, I think it was about 10 years ago. And I'll be honest, I was a little bit scared when it happened because I wasn't prepared for the intensity of the outcome. You may want to try this in your own time, but I'm not going to ask you to do this exercise here. So I'd adapted this from something I'd heard about. So I got the audience. We were in a place called Radadesh, which is in Belgium. It's a beautiful community. So we were doing a seminar, a series of workshops. I got the attendees to close their eyes, and I got them to think about, what they wanted to achieve. And I got them to imagine that they were achieving their goals. So to think about themselves in the future having achieved their goal. And I got them to intensify the positive emotions, right? So I said, okay, how are you feeling now that you've achieved your goal? And they started meditating on that. And I said, intensify it 10 times, 10 times. And it was a really positive experience. The reason why I got them to do this, and this is homework for you, by the way. I was speaking to one devotee who was giving some input. And what we're going to try and do, if the organizers are also fine with it, and I think it came through the organizers, is we want to do a follow-up. Okay, we want to do a follow-up from this session with myself and all of you, or whoever. I mean, I think they're going to define the group. Sorry, they're going to define the group. But for those people, because I think it may be people who are interested in taking some of this forward and then, rolling out some more kind of presentations to youth. And in the follow-up, I'm going to ask you about some of the homework that we've been giving you. Okay, now this is homework. So I asked them to visualize and see themselves as a success, whether it's 1 year, 3 years, 5 years down the line, and intensify the positive emotions. But then we did the opposite. And this is where it got a little bit intense. I got them to think about what happens if you don't change. I got them to imagine, think 1 year, 3 year, or 5 years down the line, what happens to you if you don't move forward and you stick with the same bad habits that you have, that you need to address. So think about yourself 1 year, 3 year, or 5 year down the line, and then imagine what happens if those habits continue to play out, continue to move in that negative direction. Where's your life going to be? And I got them to intensify those negative emotions. And what shocked me, there was I think at least one person in the audience, when they did that exercise, they started crying. And that, I was like, whoa, I didn't realize how powerful that exercise was, but they started crying. Because, and this is how you use fear. We'll talk about this as we go on, but this is how you use fear. You see, fear has a utility. You see, you want to paint a forward vision of where you want to go, but you also want to use your fear to lock you against stagnation. You want to use your fear and put your fear behind you so that you're running away from something as well. So we're trying to do the right thing. And let me just jump to this point. We're trying to become a visionary. Okay, so what you're doing is you paint a picture of the positive outcome that you want to achieve. But some of us are more motivated by positives. Some of us are more motivated by the negatives. So what do? We use both. So a brighter vision of the future, but you also use your fear to propel you forward. You also use your fear and you think to yourself, okay, what happens to me if I don't change? That's why I ask you the question, how many of you know people who've got stuck in their spiritual life, who are not growing, right? Because you use your fear to keep you from being stagnant. And you turn around and you can see it. Oh my God, there's that image of my life 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years down the line. If I don't grow, if I don't work on the things that I know I need to work on directly or indirectly. And that keeps you moving forward with determination, okay? So one piece of homework, I want you to do that visualization exercise in your own time, and I want you to write down how it felt and any realizations that were sparked by it, okay? Now, if everyone's comfortable with doing that, I just want you to use your emoticon to raise your hand. Just give me a thumbs up to say that you're up for doing it, okay? Now, let me explain why I'm doing these different emoticon things and other things. It's because when you make and neuroscience has said this as well, and this is also something in our tradition, when you make yourself publicly accountable, when you commit to something in the association of other people, you greatly amplify the chances that you will actually do what you've said, you see? And in the activity that we've given you, because it's engaging your sense of vision and other senses, but it's also engaging your emotions. When you engage your emotions and your sense of vision, it leaves what we call a samskar. It leaves an impression on your consciousness, similar to if you actually did the activity itself. So if you use these techniques, you can literally rewire your brain, rewire the way that you think, rewire the way that you feel, and therefore propel yourself forward into new habits and a new success in life. Okay, so it's very, very powerful. They did a study on this. They had a group who were learning basketball, or they were playing basketball. It was one group, similar ability. They broke the group into 3 different groups. And for a period of time, let's say 2 weeks, group 1 were told you continue to keep practicing basketball, go to the gym, play. Group 2 were told for the next 2 weeks, you do nothing. No basketball, just play, live your normal life. The third group were told for the next 2 weeks, you're not going to go to the gym, but I want you to close your eyes for a certain period of time, a set period, and visualize yourself playing basketball. Visualize yourself playing basketball, playing well, being effective in your playing. And what they found was the group who kept going into the gym had improved, and they'd improved in a way which was comparable to the group who had been visualizing. Because the mind can't tell the difference between you doing something in the so-called real world and you doing something when you visualize using all of your senses and your emotion. This is a powerful key that we've given you. If you understand the value of what we've just said, you can literally rewire your brain and create new and positive habits in the lab of your mind. And this is one of the first things we're going to expose you to as a means by which you can become more determined. So you can use visualization to imagine yourself succeeding in an area where you find that you lack determination. It could be you want to chant. It could be you want to chant in the morning. It could be you want to read the Bhagavatam. Whatever it is, you can visualize yourself doing it and flood your consciousness with positive emotions as you visualize yourself doing it. And you can imagine yourself growing, becoming stronger, wiser, more knowledgeable in your future life because of that same habit. You can literally rewire your consciousness. And in that way, break through to higher levels of determination. I'm going to go back. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to pause my sharing and go back because there's some other things I wanted to share with you before we continue. So let's see. We'll go back and share now. Okay, so I'm going to share this. Now we did want to make this interactive, and I did give a little caveat about going over time, so you know why I said that now. Okay, we're going to get into some breakout activities. What I'm going to ask you to do to look into your motivation. What I'm going to get you to do in the breakout rooms, and I think you're going to have about 6 to 7 people in the breakout room, so we'll just give you about 7 minutes. All I want you to do is to share with your peers in the breakout room. Write it down, but also share with them 2 things. Number 1, what is currently the thing that inspires you most in spiritual life? That's number 1, okay? So share that, think about that, and just share that. You have about a minute each to tune in. And the reason why we do this, and I'll tell you honestly, we do this with leaders. And it's so amazing to me how often most people don't know what motivates them. And I'm like, wow, dude, you're immediately disabling yourself, because if you don't know where you're getting your energy from, where you're getting your inspiration from, then how are you going to take advantage of it? You see? So if I know, for example, that I get great inspiration from giving class, then the next thing, and that's the second question, is how can you leverage that motivation even more to propel you forward in your spiritual life? You see, it's that simple. But in order to use it more, we have to first identify it. You see? So this is another facet of being determined. So in your breakout rooms, 2 questions. Number 1, what gives you that energy and motivation and inspiration to move forward? And if you're not sure, simply you can think back to when you were most inspired in your spiritual life, and try to identify what was going on that made me feel that way. Okay, so 2 questions. Number 1, where do I get my drive from? Where do you get your energy from to move forward in your spiritual life? And number 2, how can you leverage that more? So for example, with me, it's interesting. One of the things that just drives me, I love it. I love innovating. I love innovating in Christian consciousness, whether it's finding new ways to present the philosophy, new exercises, new angles, pioneering new projects. I just have that. I have that in my, I had a reading done and it was there. It's just, I've got a nature where I can't do the same thing the same way. Otherwise I just get bored, right? And it was told to me actually by Radha Bhakti's guru. He reminded me, I'd forgotten for years, and he told me at the end of a retreat, he said, Bhuta Bhavana, you need to find a way to pour old wine in new bottles. And I find whenever I'm innovating, doing new things, pioneering something, I just love it. So now over to you for about 7 minutes, and then we're going to step on. And the idea here is that you have something that you're trying to move towards. And for that particularly, I'm just going to touch upon this principle here, but you can read about this in your own time. And this is the importance of short-term goals. Now, don't be deceived by the value and the power of this. There's a science to this. And if anyone's interested in finding out more, there's a seminar called The Importance of Short-Term Goals by Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And there's also a chapter in one of his spiritual warrior books. And he makes an incredible point. He explains that if you don't plan, then Maya will plan for you. In other words, if you leave space in your life just kind of randomly drifting in life, what will happen is your space in life will be filled with situations, circumstances, and people that are suboptimal. Because Maya's job is to keep you in the material world. You see? So if you want to progress spiritually, it's not going to happen by accident. It will happen because you make some conscious decision to move forward in a positive direction. And that brings us to this point, the importance of short-term goals. Now, there's loads of stuff on goal setting, but to be honest with you, most of it's rubbish. I'll be very honest with you. There's a science to it. I'll give you a few key points. The first one is, when you're setting goals, your goals should be samples of a vision. In other words, let's say you've got a vision that's of your life in 5 years' time. Now, that vision should be realistic. The way you make it realistic is that you bounce that vision off people who know you. And because it's people who know you and who like you, they can help you to refine it because they're objective. You see, someone may say, you know what, I want to become a world-class gymnast in the next year. And it's like, okay, but you're eating potato chips all the time. You've never gone to a gym. You do no exercise. Is that realistic, honey? Right? So you see my point. So what you do is you come up with something as a rough draft. You then discuss it with people who know you and who are on your side. Okay? So they know you, there's an objective view of you. And then together you negotiate something that's realistic. Now, if you're going to do something that's realistic, it's always better to so set the bar below and go and shoot above it, because it generates excitement and achievement. But if you set the bar too high and don't achieve it, you may feel a bit down. Okay, so it's important to do that. And then the last thing is that you work backwards from your vision. Okay, so this is where I want to be in 5 years' time. So every day in your schedule, you put down one step minimum. You can do more than one, but you put down minimum one step every day that's going to take you on that journey towards your long-term vision. Okay, and make sure that that journey includes something of the direct processes. Improvement in your hearing, your chanting, your reading, your association. We call this the ABCD of spiritual life. A is association. B is books, so reading the books. C is chanting. I think D is devotional service, actually. But you get the point. Actually, no, let's say the D. So A is association, B is books, C is chanting. Yeah, we could say D is devotional service, so some kind of service. Make sure that when you put those steps in every day, just one thing, if you improve 1% every day, after 100 days, you made 100% improvement. Okay? And more importantly, when you do this, when you actually have these steps, this is very interesting. This is what happens. You increase your faith. Every time you achieve a small goal, it actually increases your confidence to go for something slightly bigger. I read when I was young about how they train ninjas. Okay, so what they did, the ninjas would go to like the monastery, very young, and then every day they were given a seed to plant. They put the seed in the ground and they water the seed every day, and then having watered the seed, they jump over that seed many times. So every day they water the seed, jump over the seed many times. And what's happening is that seed is growing, but in incremental amounts every day. So it's a tiny growth, and every day they're jumping over it. But because it's a tiny growth and they're jumping over it every day, what it does is it creates a mentality that I'm just jumping a little bit higher, and they can still do it every single day. So every time you achieve a goal, every time you achieve a small step, it increases your faith, your confidence, and your determination. It's so interesting. There's a literature by Bhaktivinoda Thakur called the Jaiva Dharma. In there, he talks about different types of faith. He says, and this is something that many devotees, without knowing it, many of us have what we call Lokik Shraddha. Lokik Shraddha is the faith that comes by being part of the crowd. So what some of you will recognize yourself in this. When our Shraddha is Lokik, it's the faith that comes from being around other people. Then when you're around devotees, you feel very enthusiastic and devotional because that's the crowd you're surrounded by. But when you're around non-devotees, you feel pulled in a completely different direction, because the faith isn't actually transcendental faith. It's more Lokik, it's more external. But he also explains, and the Goswamis actually explain this, and also Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jaiva Dharma, there's another type of faith, it's called Shastriya Shraddha. And it's a faith that comes from spiritual knowledge. And the Goswamis have said, and this is what happens if you read Prabhupada's books and discuss them, not just read, but it's an active reading. If you read and discuss Prabhupada's books, the Goswamis say you'll develop two things. And I've seen this. I've observed devotees and I've seen it definitely works. You develop virya and smriti. Virya means drive and determination. When you read Prabhupada's books, Prabhupada's teachings are like fire. They actually burn away the mode of ignorance in your unconscious mind. And when someone has no ignorance, they just move forward. They don't procrastinate. It's just like, get it done. It burns away the victim mentality. It burns away the sense of, oh, no, poor me, I can't do it. It's like, no, let's just get it done. But get it done realistically. So one of the easiest secret weapons for spiritual determination, strength and determination, is to cultivate spiritual knowledge by reading, reflecting, and discussing regularly. The trick is not to do it every now and then. If you do it consistently, you will see it will just transform you. You'll be shocked. I know devotees who've been reading Prabhupada's books regularly for years, and the speed of their progress is crazy. And not just the speed of their progress, their intelligence is very strong. So it's a secret weapon. You don't have to go back to Godhead by your own effort. This is what people don't understand. You will not go back to Godhead by your effort. The trick, because by your effort, you can't hit prema. But what we're meant to do is use our effort to take the medicine as well as we can. And the medicine, the active ingredient, will do the rest. Okay, so that's another key point. Let's move on quickly, then we can open up for questions. So we talked about this point, faith versus fear. Okay, and we talked about using that exercise. What happens to me if I don't change? Use the fear to keep to like someone running behind you that you're running away from. So you can use the fear to propel you forward. Okay, I'm not going to say more about that. The other thing we often don't do is to celebrate your successes. To strengthen your determination, when you hit that step, when you increase your chanting, when you read more consistently, when you're waking up early, don't be on a downer in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness, what is it Prabhupada says? He says material life is static. Spiritual life is ecstatic, you know? And it's so powerful if as devotees, we can connect positive emotions to our spiritual life. So it is your job, it is your duty to engage in spiritual life in a way that you find inspiring, okay? Do it in a way, no, don't become a victim in spiritual life. Oh, the temple president doesn't like me, or, oh, the devotees didn't give me a service that I enjoy. Oh, they didn't let me sing kirtan in the program. No, no, switch that off. Don't play, you know, change that tune. It is our job, it is our responsibility to keep ourselves inspired in spiritual life. Always have a can-do attitude, and it will strengthen your determination, right? So if one door closes, you have to remember, you know, the most powerful thing to remember about Krishna, and what will really fuel your enthusiasm and your inspiration, is that he loves you, and he loves you unconditionally, and he's in control. So even if one door closes, that means there's something better for you somewhere else, right? There's no bad days in spiritual life. It's just that we have to have the vision to understand what's going on, okay? So it is our job to keep ourselves inspired. So if you can't do one thing, okay, but think, what can I do? Yeah, what can I do? What door can I go through? What opportunities do I have? Have that can-do attitude, and it will take you very far. Let's go on. This will be homework. I'll come back to your mission, but this is just the idea of the homework, okay? When we next speak, I'm tired of this idea of just giving classes, right? Because the whole idea of giving classes is not to give a class. The whole idea is we're trying to grow. We're trying to experience Krishna. So your mission, if you choose to accept it, is the homework that we've given you previously. Please take this seriously. Even if you do one or two of these things, it will propel you forward in ways which are incredible. You can't even imagine. I'm going to ask you, this is going to be humbling. How many of you have done this before? How many of you have found that you actually use your mind against you? You imagine the things you imagine things happening that you don't want to happen. How many of you have ever had that experience? If you have, I want you to raise your hand. Be honest with me. How many of you? Yeah, exactly. We've all done that, right? And now what Krishna wants you to do is take conscious control and use your tool. Make the mind your best friend. Use it consciously to move you in the direction you want to go in, and stop meditating on the things that you don't want. Worry is a prayer for a situation that we don't want. Now this one I'll just touch upon because we said this at the beginning. Have that connection, that network of people who are mature and who are well-wishing friends of yours, okay? And don't be sentimental. Don't think that everyone fits into this category, right? You have to find these people. You can't just expect that they're going to fall out of the sky. But when you find them, cultivate that relationship. And if, for example, because this does happen, you may find them, but it may not be a two-way thing, right? From their side, the chemistry may not work, even though you like it. Fine, find someone else. But find those people and cultivate that. Your strength is in your network, okay? Because that gives you the energy of determination coming from another person. So when you don't feel inspired, they do. So their inspiration is going to spill over to you. When you feel inspired, they may not. Your inspiration is going to spill over to them. So there's interconnection. Prabhupada said, one twig by itself, you can break it very easily. Many twigs together, you can't break any of them. So this is one of the key tools and tips for unbreakable determination. Interconnection, interdependence. Okay, and then I think we're almost at the end. Yeah. All I want to say, therefore, is good luck. And I think we'll open up for questions, but I think I've done this on the other slide. Yeah, I've left my Instagram tab because we'll be sharing a lot more presentations on different platforms over the next, hopefully, well, for the next few months going forward. And if you're on Instagram, then you can sign up. Well, then you will advertise, because I'm not tech savvy. And to be honest, I need, the way I work, I'm a content producer, right? My nature is to do that. So if I have to look after all the management, it's a waste. It's not really the best use of my time. But I've got friends who are really good, and they're kind of helping to make that thing happen. But it's an easy way to stay in touch. And I'm giving a presentation on Monday on relationships. And I think we've put something on Instagram about that, so you can sign up if you're interested. Okay, I'm sorry I've gone over time, but we wanted to get all of that out. And now over to you.
Thank you so much, Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu. How amazing was that? I'm just going through all the, I'm going to pull one of the pages out of his book. If you thought I was amazing, please show a thumbs up, hands up, or yeah, you can see the comment section is just on fire from these quotes. So I do have a couple of questions. So I'm not sure whether we'll be able to get through all of them. But my first question,
regarding the questions, what we don't get through today, I'm more than happy to take those same questions at the end of my session tomorrow, where I will try and restrain myself and stick to time a little bit more. So if we don't cover them today, I know that these things are important to you, you're important to me, right? We're all family. So if I can't get through your questions today, we'll look at your questions tomorrow. We can start now.
Okay, for sure. So the first question is, how can we help the people we see aren't moving forward in their spiritual life due to fear?
The very simple thing is, let's go back, right? So this is really important. Faith versus fear. The more someone has faith, the less fearful they actually are. It really is like that. So in most cases, people's fear will be overcome by seeing proper example. So along with your own inspiration, and you talked about what motivates you, it's always important to go to higher association, right? So when advanced devotees come into your environment, when they're giving class, giving kirtan, it's really important, whenever you get the chance, go and see them, right? And go, if you can't get the chance to be in their physical presence, tune into their classes online. But when they're there physically, go and actually see them physically. Because what happens is they'll carry that spiritual energy in their consciousness and in their aura. And by being around them, that will spill over into your own consciousness. I can tell you all kinds of stories, so many things that we've experienced like that. You'd be shocked, okay? So don't think that it's optional. The number one factor for advancement is association. Yeah, the number one factor. There's a formula, and I'll share the formula tomorrow. Okay, we'll go into it tomorrow, but association is really key. Okay, so that's how you overcome fear in another person, by being the example. So faith means confidence. Okay, so you model that, you show how it's helping you move forward, and then that will give people faith, and that faith will diminish their fear, because wherever there's more faith, there's less fear.
Perfect, thank you. So the second question is, how do we find you were talking about like mature and truthful people. So how can we actually get connected? How do we find these mature and truthful people that we can connect to?
Okay, there's two things here. The first is that you should be like that yourself. You see, because there's something about, think about it like this, the magnet of the mind. If my mentality is very self-centered and selfish, then if someone's very giving, why would they associate with me? You see, if I'm a giving person, and I connect with a giving person, then there's a synergy, right? Where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, because I like to give, they like to give. Therefore, we're going to reinforce and bring each other up. And that kind of group, even if you've got a project, if I was telling Risheshwara, because when we're working on projects, I told him, look, there's 3 criteria. I've got no time for politics. I'm not into it. And if I get it, to be honest, we just get a bit stern with people. I said, so therefore, when we're doing projects, 3 criteria. Number 1 is character, right? I don't want to work with people who are political or ulterior motives, unless we absolutely have to. I don't bother. So number 1 is character. The second one was competence. The third one is capacity. So I said to him, it's in that order. So character first, right? So because I'm not going to change my nature. I like to give. I like to inspire. I like to serve. I like to infuse people. I want to give, and I'm not going to shut that down because someone else is selfish. If they're selfish, we just like, okay, if they're selfish, but they want to grow, that's different. Right? I want to improve. But if it's like, I'm comfortable being like that and the world should just do whatever I want, then it's like, fine, we ain't got that, I don't have that capacity. So we should be that, we should be the change that we want to see in others. And then the second is, don't be sentimental in spiritual life. Get to, just like you would do in the secular world, get to know people over time. Because otherwise you'll have your heart broken and you'll think it's Krishna. But it's like, Krishna's like, dude, I told you, look, the guy's asking everyone for their bank account details. That's a bad sign, dude, okay? That's not the person that you kind of, give all your money to. So you get to know them. Don't be sentimental. We should use our intelligence in spiritual life. The idea is loving wisdom, okay? Loving wisdom. There are many devotees who are stagnant or who are bitter and resentful in Krishna consciousness because they didn't do what the scriptures say. The scripture says we love everyone, but we associate wisely. Yeah, you see, that's the point. It's not just emotion, because then it's sentiment, and it's not just the head, because it's dry. It's loving wisdom. I want to understand the reality of where this person is coming from, so I can see how I can assist them in their growth. But I have to know the reality, and if I can't help them, at least I should not let them bring me down. Okay, does that answer the question?
Yeah, so the third question is, the purport to the verse that you read, I think it was from the Bhagavad Gita, is very intimidating and makes me feel like I'll never be able to fully be Krishna conscious. Mm-hmm. Will Krishna still accept my effort even though it's really not that great?
Okay, that's a very good question. Okay, now the first thing, I'm going to reframe that. So it's not that, like, so let's be very clear. Our whole spiritual life is personal. So what I would say is you may have felt intimidated at this time, but I guarantee you not everyone on this class feels intimidated. And it's important to know that, because then we understand the difference between the objective quality of something as opposed to how I'm feeling about it at this time. And I'm making this distinction on purpose. There's something that we do when we're doing some classes on relationships. And what we do is, instead of telling the partner, you're like this, what we say is, when you do this, I feel this way. And the reason for that distinction is because then we own our feelings. Otherwise, if I don't own my feelings, then what happens subtly is I'm saying that I feel the way I do, which is negative, and it's all your fault. But what I'm really saying is you have the power to control everything about my feelings, my emotions, and my life. Do you really want to give your power away like that to other people? You see, it's really important to understand. There's something that's very powerful when we take ownership. When I take responsibility for my feelings, then what you've done, see, people don't like responsibility in modern life. But you know what the funny thing is? That word responsibility is synonymous with power. So when I take responsibility for my life and my feelings, I'm actually also taking the full power back. And when I take that full power, then I become powerful and able to move my life in a positive direction. Now, that doesn't mean that people won't do things that upset us. That we have natural human emotions, but when we get stuck in the negative, that means we've actually disempowered ourselves, and we're labeling, we've taken on an identity, which is one of being a victim. Okay, so you may feel negative about something that someone's done temporarily, but if 10 years down the line you're still bitter and resentful, you've taken on the label of a victim. Don't give your power away. Right? That's really important. So now we've understood this, I want to say to the person who asked the question, I'm really grateful to you. And this is Christian's arrangement, because there was one other thing I wanted to say about this statement, this verse in the Bhagavad Gita. And what I wanted to share with you about this is that in this point about steadfastness by yoga practice, control the activities of the mind, it comes down to one thing for most of us: Find activities in Krishna consciousness that inspire you. Full stop. Right? We made the point earlier. So the essence of this entire verse is, okay, what can I do in Krishna consciousness that I find inspiring? Okay, I love this kirtaniya. I love the way that they lead kirtan. I'm going to listen to more of their kirtans, right? Okay, I love hearing classes by by this guru. I'm going to tune into more of those classes by that guru. I love reading when Prabhupada writes about this topic. So I'm going to read about that topic. I love being involved in this kind of service in Krishna consciousness. So I'm going to do that service in Krishna consciousness whenever it's available. Right? And in that way, it's not a question of being intimidated, because you're deciding what you're going to do in Krishna consciousness, and you're doing the things in Krishna consciousness that inspire you. You see? And that's what it's speaking about here. That determination which is unbreakable, which is sustained with steadfastness by yoga practice. The yoga practice, yoga means union. So what is yoga practice? Yoga practice is when we connect to Krishna through some service. We build our unity and union with Krishna through some activity. And my wife, she's studying so we're putting together a seminar. It's going to take a month, probably like a year, because it's like it's a major work. But it's on the entire journey of Krishna consciousness, from the beginning to the end, and how the whole thing works in the different stages. And like, so she's a scholar, right? So she's reading Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani, Bhakti Rasamrita. So Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani is by Shiva Ramaraj, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Rupa Goswami, and then there's Waves of Devotion, right? So and these are all about the journey of Krishna consciousness, the path. And so she was sharing with me in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So Rupa Goswami, he talks about devotional service, and he mentions two elements, which is really important. One is called chesta. So the chesta means the activity itself, right? So you're doing devotional service, you're doing an activity. And the second element that Rupa Goswami mentions in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is bhava. So the bhava refers to the mood in which the activity is done. So both things are important. You're doing an activity and you're meant to do it in a favorable mood, right? You want to do it joyfully, shushukam, right? Kartam avyayam. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that devotional service is joyfully performed. You want to do it joyfully for the pleasure of Krishna, Guru, Vaishnavas. If you do it in that mood, you make rapid advancement. Okay, so it's not so it's how you choose to look at this and what you take from this statement. And what I'm encouraging you to take from this statement is, what can I do in Krishna consciousness that I find inspiring and progressive? And in that way, you won't feel disheartened. Is that okay as an answer?
So there were lots of questions, and as we said, we won't have the time to get into them. But for the final question, I wanted to ask this one, that this was actually a question from the previous session that wasn't addressed. So I wanted to bring it up to you and maybe get your insights on this. So although the following may be denominations, but I still am a queer male, and such identities affect my everyday life in all ways. How can we come to terms with our day-to-day identities and the deeper truths of the tradition?
Mm-hmm. Very, very good question. So first of all, the person who said that, thank you for sharing that question. And actually, I think that what you're saying, it actually relates to all of us. And so that, let's say that identity that we have, which is more worldly, for whatever reason, whether it's ethnicity, gender, anything else, what we do with that identity, actually what we do ultimately is do not worry too much about the mundane. Connect with the transcendental. So one of the things that we were reflecting on, so we were speaking at it was a disciples retreat online earlier this year with Chandramali Maharaj. And we were reflecting on the fact that devotional service, being non-different from Krishna, it is literally all powerful. Okay, so to reframe your question, it's like saying, you know, I've got this illness, and you know, it's an illness and I'm not saying that the person's an illness. I'm talking about mundane identity generally. Okay, so I'm just making that point. So let's say I've got an illness, a disease, and you know, it's a bit troubling. And how do I deal with this? Okay, you can focus on the disease, right? And I mean that in the general category of all material identities. But you know what's more powerful? Why be on a downer? Why focus on the material identity? Why not focus on the spiritual medicine? You see, rather than focusing on the material identity, if we engage in taking the spiritual medicine in a way that we find inspiring, everything else that needs to be done will automatically be adjusted. Just like if you have a health concern, it's inside your body, right? Okay, but you can't reach inside your body to adjust all the different things about the organs and the health concern. But what you can do is take the medicine. Okay, so it comes back to the same ultimate point. Let's look at how we can take the medicine as inspired, as enthusiastically as possible, and everything else will be taken care of. Okay. Does that answer the question?
I hope so, yeah. I just want to thank Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu once again, from like all my heart, that for giving us your time. I first met Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu in 2014, and I just heard one session of his, and it was literally just mind blown. And then I came across this lecture where he talked about how to study Srila Prabhupada's books. And that itself also just completely revolutionized the way I study, the way I read Prabhupada's books. And I hope everyone can tell just from this session, the change that just one session with Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu can bring in our spiritual lives. So thank you once again so much, Prabhu, for giving us your time today. Also,
see you guys, sorry, for those who can attend tomorrow. Sorry.
Yeah, so there's going to be a session tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. Eastern with Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu, and then a boys Q&A at 5 p.m. again with Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu. And then we'll also be sharing the details of Prabhu's talk for Monday as well. So please come to those. And the next session will be in about 20 minutes with Vaishishya